All right, as promised, we were finally going to get back to actually checking a drawing. So there is a document which is in this videos folder. I'll also send it to you over Teams as well, so that way you have a copy of it. But this is a little bit dated. Still got a lot of relevant information here that's going to pertain to checking drawings, but we're going to use this to actually check the two drawings that we just produced for Legislative Office Building here, so L1 and L4. Um, we're going to run through this line by line together. And you can see on the right-hand side, this was originally designed in order to allow you to check these off as you went through each of your prints. We used to laminate these and put them on everybody's desks, but I do want to actually redo these at some point and make them a little bit more easier to get through, easier to read, and a little easier to understand. It's very, very word heavy, but again, the information here is still pretty relevant. A lot of it's important here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to split this vertically in Bluebeam so that way we can have one half of our screen, this checklist, and the other half will be our actual drawing itself. Oh, let me see if I can move these over. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I was trying to do. All right. So let me see if I can get this about the right size to fit in here. That'll work. That'll work. Okay, this will be fine. All right, let's start with L1. So the first item in the drawing checklist here says title block, and that would be anything on the right-hand side of your screen. It mentions all packet numbers used are shown. So sometimes we used to have multiple packet numbers per drawing. We are now down to just one packet number per drawing, so that makes that a lot easier. But it's also a good idea to check your sub number as well while you're looking for packet number to make sure that that's correct. It also mentions check your spelling. Make sure that placement, which placement over there is not really too relevant now. But anyway, print reference, date, revision notes, drafter's notes, finishes are all the most current finishes, and everything lines up over here to what it needs to on the job. So let's start by looking at this. We'll go right in order with what it says. So we'll go down to the bottom here and check this out. So packet number and sub number for L1. There we go. Let's go to L1.0. We'll go back to the list of drawings that we had. I'm going to just check my drafting checklist because that's where that lives right now. The packet number is 45992, and it is sub number 001. So that's what we got there. Next up, we're going to go check the spelling, which you can do that in AutoCAD too. If you hit F7, it should open a spell check for you. You can run through that and make sure everything looks good. Then we're going to go through pretty much this information here, which today a lot of this is already filled out for you. So a lot of that you don't have to worry about, but some of it is still needing to be filled out by the drafter, which means your initials need to be filled out. You know, to make sure you have the date that you published the drawing, which is a formula that automatically populates anyway. You want to make sure that this description matches up with the description that you have in your list. So that would be laminate casework, level B1, storage room B1203. And that looks like what we've got here. So we're good with that. All right, and then let's see, I got my initials there. We're good on that. Yeah, I think this is pretty good on this part. We did go through these pretty extensively, so I'm not really anticipating there being anything here that needs to change, but we'll get to that soon. Page layout is correct. Okay, so meaning that when the page layout is correct, it means you are reading this from left to right and top to bottom. So, and the order of these views is also labeled in here as well. So axonometric view for 3D drawings, plan view for your top-down view, RCP for the ceiling plan, elevation view for any sort of like front-facing views that you have there. section views, detail views. But then it has a little side note, which goes back to that note we talked about earlier, where detail views can be placed anywhere on the drawing, and they don't have to be in a specific order. Whereas the rest of the views all have to follow this order pretty strictly. So you don't want to put a section view in between your plan and your elevation view because it's going to be out of order in the way you view the drawing. So you want to make sure it always goes plan, elevation, then section, and so on. So yep, it looks like we have that so far. I'm going to go through this one more time, make sure section views are all on this page and they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. So we've got that. That is the next thing here. It says print reference and view numbers are correct in the view titles. And to make sure that your architectural references are correct and your scale is correct. Now, the cool thing about this nowadays is that the scale, let's see, the print reference, and well, that might be it actually. The scale and the print reference come in as a formula now too. So that stuff you don't have to worry about so much, but it's one thing to look for though too on your section calls, because like this one here, we replaced this formula with an actual number that we typed in for these L1.1s. So that was something that we had to break the formula because it doesn't refer to the next page. It always refers to the current page those view calls are on. And so a lot of that stuff is pre-filled out for you nowadays, but this is pertaining to view calls here. So anyways, so that we have those, let's go ahead and make sure that these are correct. If you want to pull up page A02-34, view number A1, that should be your plan view for this. So we're going to go into Legislative Office, go into Drawings, Architecturals, and we're going to pull up that drawing just to make sure that that is correct. A02-34. Okay, so this is for L1, and again, L1 is in this room, meaning that this is in fact the correct arc reference. So just double checking that, looks like we're good there. Going over to your elevation view, let's also verify that information too. So we're on view 2, elevation view, arc reference. We need to verify to make sure that that's correct. It's on page I08-01. So I08-01, view number 1, so top corner here. Yep, everything looks to be correct there. Cool, very nice. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go to our section views. And what I'm going to do with these is kind of refer to, oops, my bad, kind of refer to the, there we go, to the elevation view to make sure that these are right. So again, on this print, I remember when we talked about it before, there wasn't a section call through this cabinet specifically, but the view right adjacent to it did have a call through a very similar cabinet, if not the same. So we ended up using that arc reference for the section view through that upper cabinet that's above the refrigerator. That's 7 on 08-11, which we've got there. Moving on here, this is the other upper cabinet, the one that's above the, let's go back to our actual drawing, the one that's above the countertop. And they're calling that to be 6 on I08-11, which looks like that's what we've got there. So as I'm doing this, I'm also looking at view number and the type of view that we're looking at to make sure we didn't forget any of these two. All right, so sink cabinet, view 10, I08-10, view 10, I08-10, cool. All right, the 4-drawer stack, 1 on I08-10, 1 on I08-10, all right. View 5, the 2-door base cab with 1 adjustable shelf, that's view 4 on I08-10, that is correct there. All right, and then we have the trash cabinet, which is 5 on I08-10, 5 on I08-10. Okay, arc references appear to be good. Oh, again, if you have a trash pullout, usually we do like a detail like this. I think I forgot to add that to L4, so we're going to have to make note of that here. Yep, I did. So I make a note to self. We need to add that in. That's a correction I got to make right there. Okay. Going back to L1, let's take a look at what else we've got here. So dimension strings add up to the overall dimension and match the current architecturals. So making sure that your dimensions make sense, that they all add up to be the overall dimension on the print, and they match between your drawing views too. You also need to make sure you have sufficient information to build and install the product, aka labeling reveals, making sure all your dimensions are there. So we've done a pretty good job of that. As you can see, every time there's a reveal, it's dimensioned and labeled as a reveal. Every time there is any dimensions here, let's double check and make sure. You can use your calculator. If you don't have one, you can use your on-screen calculator for this, but I'm just going to add up the dimensions of my cabinets down here and my fillers and just make sure that it adds up to 196 because that's what I'm looking for there. So 35, 36, 18, 29, and 11 30 seconds. 29 and 11 30 seconds. 29 and 11 30 seconds. And 18 and 1. Let's see and make sure I got that right. 35, 36, 18, 29 plus 11 divided by 32, 3 plus 18 plus 1. Okay. So sometimes you do get these little weird rounding issues. I think that's what I'm seeing here. Sorry, I'm just checking it one more time to make sure. Triple checking. I have 1/32 more than what I need here. I think that's probably due to rounding, but I'm going to check and make sure on that. I'll just make a note to self to check rounding on these. All right, let's check the upper cabs too and just make sure that those are correct. So 1 plus 34 plus 36 plus 18 plus 18 plus 1, and then plus 29, 29, 29, and 11 30 seconds, plus 11 30 seconds, plus 11 30 seconds. So these again are a little bit over. It's a 30-second over. So I'm going to check the rounding specifically on these dimensions to make sure that they're correct. All right. Anyways, we've kind of looked at that. We have the dimension of the countertop here. I did notice I don't have the dimension of my upper cabinet, so I'm going to go ahead and add a note to self for that too. We want to make sure we add that here for the upper cabs. I'll put a little cloud around that too so I don't miss it by mistake. Okay, and let me see, what else do we need to look at? VIF dimensions are used correctly. Okay, so meaning if you have a dimension that spans between two walls or between two products that are by somebody else, you do have to put a VIF on that. And we did use that here. And we've also used our VWEs in according to where there are equipment specs that need to go on the drawing. So VWE stands for verify with equipment. VIF stands for verify in field. And verify in field is a measurement that has to be obtained from the field between two objects. Verify with equipment just means we have to verify to make sure the equipment will fit within the space given. All right, keep on moving. We have locating dimensions given in the plan or elevation show exact location in the room that item is to be placed. Okay, so segue a little bit on this. This won't pertain to our drawing here, but let's say you have like a kitchen island or a table that's in the middle of a room. You will have to provide what's called locating dimensions to those items, meaning that you need to give the install team some direction on where they need to install that item. So usually what we'll do is we'll pull dimensions off of a wall or a column in the field, and we'll give them a direction, like a dimension in one direction and a dimension in the in another direction there. So that way they have like sort of like at least kind of a guideline as to where the item needs to go to be installed. When you have things like this, where there are cabinets that are butting walls or they're in between two walls, a locating dimension really isn't going to help anything, so we don't provide them for these. But if the item is in the middle of the room, like a table or an island, then you definitely need to put some kind of locating dimension there for the install team to know where to put it. Moving on down the list, we have standard on-site construction methods are being used. As long as you are using the cabinet blocks, you should not have any issue with this at all. This is all built into the blocks nowadays. When this document was created, this was not the case. We actually had to draw a lot of things by hand. So now that that is kind of predefined for you, you don't really need to pay too much attention to this when it comes to cabs. When you get into more furniture type items like framing or desks or things like that, you will need to pay more attention to this. But for the most part, cabinets are pretty much like solid as far as the construction method goes, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Make sure that all equipment specs and sizes are labeled. If there is a finished panel, provide dimensions and details that go with that finished panel. So you may have seen one of these before. There are like refrigerators or dishwashers that exist out in the real world that will have, with panel ready appliances. So like this is one here. This is a refrigerator that has specific mounting brackets on the front of it that allow you to mount a panel to the front of that fridge door. So sometimes an architect will specify something like this, and if that's the case, what you'll want to do is go on the website for that equipment and see if they have a like a panel cut sheet on their website. Sometimes they'll have a CAD formatted file, sometimes it'll be a PDF. But if they have that, we're going to include that on our drawing too. In our case, we don't have that right here, so we don't have to worry about it. But I just wanted to show you what that looked like in case you were wondering. So that's a panel ready appliance. Sometimes that does happen. You'll see that occasionally here, but just not in this case. All right. But we did specify the equipment. As you can see, we have that labeled right there. It's also labeled, well, I guess it's not on here, but we labeled what we did have. I know we couldn't find the sink, so we left the sink alone, but we did put that refrigerator there. I think I will put a note here that just specifies that the sink and faucet are by others. Because we want to make sure that they don't assume that the mill worker is picking that up. They usually wouldn't do that anyway, but better cover our tracks anyway. So, where were we? All details are included: pole locations, panel ready equipment, cutout dimensions for like grommets or trash cutouts in the countertop, sink, trash chutes, etc. Pretty much explaining that again. Sections do show poles, slides, and hinges. So once we've got that covered, I mean, most of our blocks do include that here too. So all that's there. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, well, there's no other cutout details necessarily here until we know what the sink is. So once we know what that sink is, we should be able to actually provide a cutout dimension on there. If we cannot locate that sink spec or they don't provide it to us, what will likely happen is the sink will be cut out in the field by the install team, or in this case, because it's a stone top, we'll have the stone vendor actually cut the sink out in the field. Usually they'll have the sink there, and they'll usually have like a template out in the field that goes with that sink, and they'll tape it down, and they'll actually route that countertop out to match the sink cutout. So I'm going to just make a note to self here that says sink and faucet by others again, just like that. just for myself because I want to make sure I note it, even though I have it here too. Um, let's see. Dimension finishes and notes are correctly placed and notated. Okay, so we've kind of gone through the dimensions already. For cabinets, again, you want to make sure that you provide your countertop widths and depths in your plan view. If you have upper cabinets, make sure to include that depth there too. Um, any other relevant information like wall-to-wall dimensions, you can throw that in your plan view here as well. We do have finishes on there, so SS1 for the countertop. And over here, we have PL1 and PL2 there. I just want to make sure that's correct. In and Hardware 53. Anyways, so in addition to that, dimensions on your elevation view, what you want to show again is like any opening. So like this here for the opening for the refrigerator, and then any wall-to-wall dimensions for your cabinets, you want to include that there, and filler dimensions. On the elevation view, it's also important to show floor to countertop height, countertop to underside of upper cabinet height, and then upper cabinet height, and then your filler at the very top. Because the elevation view is one of the only views that shows the height from floor to ceiling, it's also important to include that dimension there too, which will end up being a VIF slash at above finished floor dimension, just like that. In our case, because the ceiling is right above our cabinets there. So dimensionally, we're good on that. Go to the next page. Next page, because these cabinet sections are on a separate page from the plan view, we need to make sure that the plan or that the depth dimensions are provided here as well, which we've done. We're going to make sure that we have the cabinet carcass heights labeled. So 32.5 dimension here at the back. That would be from floor to very top edge of cabinet itself. And then you have your drawer dimensions at the front, countertop apron, any gaps that are included in between, your toe kick dimensions, and your depth between your sub base and the wall. Okay, so we've pretty much covered the bases there for dimensions and finishes and notes. So, okay, so we're going to move on to grain directions, field joints, door swings, and shelves. Again, a lot of that stuff is pre-built into your blocks, but you do have to make sure that you toggle on the adjustable shelf if you want to see one in your elevation view. So like for us, I'm going to go back to L1, my bad. For us, we had to put on 2 adjustable shelves per each upper cabinet, aside from the one above the fridge that had none. And then we do have the door swings, which again, they make this kind of like a V shape here. The side with the arrow, or the pointy side, goes on the side with the hinges. The side that has the 2 open portions goes on the non-hinged side of the door, and that's pretty standard. These ones here, they're kind of tilted the other way 90 degrees. That indicates that this is a pull-out drawer, and that is built into the block as well, so you don't have to draw that in your print anymore. But it's something that is something worth noting. So in case you have to explode a block or you have to draw some kind of custom cabinet, you want to make sure you include those door and drawer swings on there because it is important. Let's see. Grain directions and field joints, also we need to talk about those. So we do have a field joint here in the countertop, and we have grain directions on PL1 because PL1 is a grained laminate, which you can also find that here in your page notes. It will say grained on it typically if it does have a grain to it. If you click on that link there, it will also take you to the website of the laminate, which will show you that it is in fact grained. Again, just to recap a little bit, when you have cabinets, the grain direction is typically going to be vertical on the cabinet doors and the drawer fronts. On the base trim, if this was a grained laminate, it would usually want to run horizontally from left to right. Okay, so let's see, anything else? Field joints. We want to make sure that's notated. It looks like we did write FJ there, and we dimensioned to that field joint, which is perfect. Exactly what we want to see. Okay, all scope of work is included and coordinates with other packets for that area and show how they interact. So that doesn't really pertain to this print exactly, but if there were panels or another set of cabinets or anything like that next to these cabinets, you'd want to show them. And if that was the case, like let's say maybe there are some wall panels over here, it's a little wide or a little thick. But if there are some wall panels over here on your drawing, well, on a different drawing, you would want to point to them and say CP drawing or CP6, whatever that panel drawing is, for panel information. In our case, we actually don't have anything like that, but that's only when you have two drawings by on site that are kind of interacting or close to each other. You want to show how they interact with each other if they do, and you also want to take note on your drawing that there are other areas of scope around the area that you're working, if there are. In our case, there's not, so we don't have to worry about that. Drawing utilizes the correct core materials and construction techniques that pertain to those materials, and the correct hatching is also shown. So again, these blocks do a really, really good job of keeping you on the right track when it comes to that. So all your hatching should be predefined for you. If you ever have to hatch something though, if you ever do run into a question on what hatch to use or what I should be using to draw this, just let me know and I'll talk through it with you. But all of our blocks have that hatching built in, so you don't have to even worry about like having to accidentally pick the wrong hatch or something by mistake. It's already set up for you. All right. AWI and QCP standards are being followed. Again, most of these blocks are going to lock you into those standards, so you can't really deviate too much from them. There are going to be times though where like you build a custom cabinet or you might be working on something like super weird, and you might have to really pay attention to those AWI and QCP standards. That's where that book I was showing you earlier, you probably can't see it if I hold it up now because of the white screen, but the Architectural Woodwork Industry Standards Book, Edition 2, or Architectural Woodwork Institute Quality Standards Book, or their website all have a lot of really good information on cabinet standards. So cabinet standards are a lot more picky about. And if you have any questions about that or you need any help with that, let me know. There are specific dimensions for like doors and different things on cabinets that we'll have to follow, but usually what I'll do is I'll check the prints, and if I see anything that goes outside the norm for QCP or AWI, I'll let you know. But most of the blocks here are going to keep you within those standards, so you don't have to do too much extra work on that. Check boxes are checked off if the job is FSC, QCP, or LEED. Now this is pre-done for you. So prior to you drawing the print, this is already checked for you if any of these apply to the drawing that you're working on. Sometimes, well, we used to have a check mark for fire rated and wet. Now, if you have something like that, where you know you're going to have to use like some kind of a water resistant core, mostly for the base trim, we'll put that now in the general notes. So, or if there's something that needs to be fire rated, which we'll talk about that in the handoff meeting, and it'll be in the meeting notes folder. If there is anything that needs to be fire rated, that'll go here. And then if necessary, any abnormal install or build notes are included, such as reverse hang cleats, which we'll talk about later, assemble in field, ship in sections, etc. So cabinets really don't have a lot of this stuff. We'll talk about reverse hang cleats when we get to panels. The rest of that stuff is mostly pertaining to when you get to the specialty furniture like desks, islands, tables, etc. Those are going to have more pertinent notes as to abnormal install methods or abnormal like things that the installer would need to know to be able to install this accurately. So I have a few notes for myself on this one here. I'm also going to look at L4 real quick, and I'm just going to zip through these and just see if I catch anything else that needs to be added here. I mean, just kind of run through that list here. I probably won't do as much explaining this time around just to kind of get through it. So 45997, that's for L4. Yep, that's correct. 001. All right, laminate case for copy room, TBD. Yep, got it right there. All right, yeah, today's dates, our initials, job number. Looks like that's all good to go. We need to add that trash can detail, of course. Let me check my dimensions and make sure these add up to these. So We have 0.25 for the overhang, 18 for the drawer stack, 28 for the double door, 18 for the trash pullout, and 1 for the filler, which is 65.25, which is what we've got there. Perfect. Okay, sweet. So moving on down to here, dimensionally, I think we're good. Again, we talked about that. We don't need a depth dimension because that's on the plan view, which is on this page. So that's good. Let's see. Our page layout is correct. We got plan, elevation, sections, and we're going plan, elevation, sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, these 2 is your elevation view pointing this way, which is your elevation view number there. You've got view 3, which is your drawer stack, view 4, which is your double door, view 5, which is your trash pullout, and view 6, which is your upper cab. We have our finished ends labeled there, fillers labeled here, reveals labeled there. So we're good on all that stuff. No locating dimensions are going to be needed. We did, oh, let's add a VIF to this. I almost didn't catch that. Okay. Okay, we did not have that, so I'm going to make sure we get that added. We're verifying field for that overall dim. Okay, locating dimensions, not applicable to this. We're going to skip over that because our blocks are having our standard construction in them already. Equipment, there was a copy machine here. I don't actually know what the spec for that was based on their drawing. It didn't really say, so I'm going to say copy machine by others here. And architect to provide spec. Oh, that's weird. Let's go ahead and move that over. I'm going to put a note like this on here just for them to let them know that we're kind of wanting to know what that spec is for the copy machine so we can make sure it does fit in here. And that VWE dimension for that width is right there too. All right. Let's see. Details, pull locations, panel ready equipment. All that's in the general notes. We don't have any panel ready equipment here. No cutout items like trash chutes or sinks on this particular print. We do show poles, slides, and hinges on the section views down below. We've made sure of that. And let's see. Dimensions, finishes, and notes are correctly placed. Just run through that real quick. PL4, width dimensions, depth dimensions, PL4, overall widths, heights are included. Let's see, we got our cabinet carcass height, subbase depth, toe kick height and depth, drawer heights, gap heights, apron height. Looks like we're good on that. Grain direction, field joints, door swings, and shelves notated in elevation. So as far as I know, I don't think PL4 was grained. If you want to double check, we can click on that and check. I think it's just a standard color, no grain to it. Okay, so no grain direction needed, but door swings are there. Okay, shelves are there, awesome. Let's see. Anything else we need? All scope of work is included and coordinates with other packets for that area. Again, that doesn't apply to here. There's no other millwork scope in this room other than this cabinet, counter, and upper cabinets. So there's nothing we need to do with that. Then we have drawing utilizes correct core material. Again, the blocks are going to keep you from using the incorrect cores on different things. These are also built into the blocks for the most part. Checkbox is already done for you. And there's no abnormal installs on this. So I have a few notes to correct on my end. One being on, let's go back to L1. Let's re-review what we've got here. I need to make note that the sink and faucet are going to be by others or B/O. I need to add a depth dimension for my upper cabinets here in my plan view. I'm going to verify that these are the correct dimensions. I'm assuming that because there's 3 of them, it kind of rounded it a little funky. which made my overall dimension when adding these up a 32nd larger than what it shows here. So I got to verify that. Same deal for these. On the section page for L1, I just needed to make note that the sink and faucet, again, are by others there. That'll have to be taken care of. L4, let's review that too. We have VIF on the overall wall-to-wall dimension. We did make note of the depths here, so we're good on that. Need to make sure that we put copy machine by others, architect to provide spec. We're going to make sure we get that added to our drawing. And I need to include this guy because I have a trash pullout as part of L4 here. So I need to add that to my drawing up here somewhere. I think that as far as I'm aware, I think that's all that we really missed on these. So I'm going to go ahead and update those. And in the meantime, if you have any of those on your print too, be sure to make sure you get this updated as well. I'm just going to go into my CAD file, update those, and what I'll do is I'm going to republish them right to the new drafting files folder. So what I'm going to do with the ones that are currently in there, I'm going to go find that folder. And the ones that I have put in here, I gotta close these first. And I'm going to move these into corrections, even though I self-corrected or self-checked my work. But it's for me to know that I did make these changes. So I'm moving these to corrections. I'm going to go into my CAD, make those changes. Once I'm done with those changes, I'm going to mark those two packets as review. We'll mark them as review. Then the drawing checker will come back and make sure that we didn't miss anything else. If we didn't miss anything else, the drawing will then be moved over to complete. It'll be moved to the prelim plots folder from there, which is right there. That's where all the finalized drawings will go. And then if there are any corrections that we get back, the print will be marked corrections here. And then in the folder, you'll find those drawing corrections in the drawings folder under 05 corrections and then drafting corrections. So that's where those are going to live if there are any changes that need to be made to the print. All right, from there, I think I'm going to cut this off right here. I'll make those changes once I have that done. I think what I'm going to do is either have you work on some practice drawing for cabinets, or I might jump in to start working on panel training with you next. So, oh, you know what? I can't skip that. I got to go. Before we get into panel training, we need to talk about specialized cabinets like vanities, tall cabinets, microwave cabinets, etc. So we're going to do a little bit of work on that, but we won't make a full drawing for those. We'll just talk through those. So that'll be what's next on the list here.